Welcome to the Fueling Deals Podcast, the podcast that teaches how to accelerate your business growth through all types of deals. It's time to fuel up, so buckle in with your host, Corey Kupfer.
There are only two ways to grow your business: organically through sales and marketing and providing great products and services, and inorganically through deals. Too many companies focus only on the first way, organic growth. Welcome to the podcast, which will help accelerate your business growth inorganically. My guests are a huge variety of deal makers and experts on all types of deals who have personal experience that can help you grow, get clear, learn best practices, and avoid mistakes. We discuss everything from large, complex mergers and acquisitions to smaller deals that you can do even without significant capital. This is actually going to be our first best of episode. So now that we're over a year into doing this podcast and we're around 60 or so episodes, we've decided to do some best of episodes. Maybe one a quarter we'll probably do. And the reason for that is that there is so much good information, and we're going to group them into themes. The theme of this one is really around accelerating growth, and we're going to pull out just a few excerpts from some of the from about, in this case, 4 of the prior podcasts, and put them together in a way that I think will be useful for the audience here, and you'll get to hear a few different views on the particular topic. And then also, some of these are from earlier episodes that, obviously we've gotten a growing audience as the podcast has continued. And you may have missed some of these, especially if they were earlier and you didn't start listening yet, or maybe you have been listening, but you didn't, you missed an episode. So, if you find something that is interesting to you here in the best of episode, you can always go back and check out the full episode of that person that we have a clip from. So on this best of episode, we're going to be have a clip from Carl Gould, who was episode 45, so not that long ago. Bruce Eckfeldt, who's back on episode 11, so it's very possible those of you who came in later might not have heard Bruce's episode unless you went back and listened to past episodes. The third person is Phil Buchanan, episode 9, so similarly an early one, and then Matt Wavro, which is episode 48. And you'll hear those excerpts with a little, some connectors from me, and then I'll close it. And again, we're going to do these sort of by theme or topic, probably once a quarter. So here we go. We're going to kick it off. We're going to start off with Carl Gould, who's going to talk a little bit about monthly recurring revenue, the value of that, how you accelerate valuation, and then eventually sell to competitors. So here we go with Carl Gould.
So I had a landscaping company, which I sold, and then subsequently I had a construction company that I sold. And they were similar in that I sold them to competitive companies. They were people I knew, actually. And they were, I felt the time was right. I was dispassionate about those two businesses because they weren't my true calling. And I felt like I got a good deal for each one of them. However, I probably didn't get the best deal I could have because I was leaving at a time that was more convenient to me than probably convenient for the business. Meaning I got the most out of it when I got out of it. I was a little bit more purposeful when I when I sold the construction company. Because I knew I wanted to do coaching, and I had a little mantra with my advisor at the time, and I said I want to hang up the hammer. And so the business was much more of a well-run machine that was more sellable. My landscaping company, I built on hustle, and I had built because you wouldn't have used the terms MRR and ARR back then, monthly recurring revenue and annual recurring revenue. But that's what I had. I had a landscape maintenance company where we had long-term contracts. I was able to sell the contracts. I was able to sell the relationships, and got a premium for that. Some of my project work, but I learned very quickly in my landscaping company that my MRR was worth 3 to 4 times what my project revenue was. So I was winning that game on hustle, and what made the landscaping deal a good deal was I was able to sell my recurring revenue, which was excellent at the time. And that's what really drove the value of that deal. The construction company was mostly project-based work, but I was on the other side of the transaction. I bought the land, owned the land. I had a log home dealership as well as a modular home dealership, distributorship. And so I had more assets to sell and I had deals where I was able to sell off the value of the deals that I had. And in both cases, I had built up a brand which was stronger than the people who had bought from me. So I agreed to stay on and receive a commission for any referrals I got, because I understood and I learned on the first deal, even though I sell my business, the people that I sold called me to say, well, we want to stay with you. And because of the advertising I'd been doing at the time, people still called me, right? Even though, the owner bought the business, they had the number, people were still finding their way to me. So what I learned in the first deal was I said, hey, listen, people are still going to call me. I am happy to stay on and be a referrer. Or if it's convenient enough, sell and close the deal. Won't take too much effort. It's not a long sales cycle in these two businesses. So let's strike a commission deal or a referral deal, because I truly don't want to be in either of these businesses anymore. But I do know people are going to call me. So I'm happy to be an ambassador. I want it to go well for you. And so we worked, what I think worked well in both deals that I'm glad that we did was we worked out an arrangement where I can participate in any new business I sent them. And in the first deal, that went on for a few years. When I sold my landscaping company, there were only a few companies like us around, and that was the early 90s in our area. So that actually worked out really well for the next few years. And I made, significant side hustle money, if you will, just answering the phone, answering questions for the prospect and reassuring them that the person that bought my company was a good place to go. And I had said to them, tell me what you plan to charge, and I can give them a good range. And believe me, I'll tee them up well. So when they get to your sales folks or your estimators, it's going to be your job to lose. Let's put it that way. And that worked out really well. So I'm glad that we did that. And the transition of power was very peaceful, if you know what I mean.
So you just heard from Carl Gould talking about actually some of his early experiences in selling two of his businesses and how he created monthly recurring revenue and sold, and then also found a way to continue to make money after by still being affiliated with the company and sending business there. Carl, by the way, if you want to listen to his full episode now, is a phenomenal coach and consultant to help companies grow. And there's a lot more on that episode on what he's done. We just took some of his early stuff. We're now going to transition into Bruce Eckfeldt, who Bruce is a scaling up coach and consultant, a phenomenal guy, good friend of mine. And he talked about how he helps companies dramatically scale. So now we're moving from where Carl was in those early businesses, although, again, he does stuff with companies that accelerate growth now as well. But in terms of the excerpts, we're moving to Bruce talking about how we scale a company. And then he and I got a discussion about Les McEwen's work with predictable success and that book, and how we both sort of believe in some of those concepts and getting through whitewater and various stages that he talks about. So check out this excerpt from Bruce Eckfeldt.
Most of the time I'm being hired to dramatically scale a company. We're looking at 50 to 100% or more growth per year, when I get involved. And honestly, one of the first questions I talk to leadership, I'll sit down with the CEO, with the founder, if they're running the company, and we have a kind of frank, honest conversation of, do they really want to do this? Because growing the business is more than just about more revenue at the top of the balance sheet. I mean, we're looking at really changing how the organization operates, and it's a change in what the leadership needs to do. And yeah, like you said, quite often I've seen too many cases where the entrepreneur starts to grow the business and they stop having fun and they stop enjoying it. And best case scenario is they realize it and they either stop growing and they shrink it back to where they're having fun, or they look to monetize the value of the company and get back to starting something new. Worst case scenario is they get into a self-sabotage mode. They end up kind of destroying the value they've created because they don't really want to grow, but they're not aware enough around it to take a more productive option around it. And it's an honest conversation where we just look at what does it mean to grow, and what is the leadership change that a CEO needs to go through. Yes, you're now operating a company through other people and building out a leadership team. And that is a different kind of process and a different kind of work than, if you're a craftsman or a master of a particular trade or a particular, whether it's technology or design or, you will do less of the actual work. And if that is not something that you want, then scaling can be a really difficult challenge, I think, personally for the leader, for the CEO. So it's something that I think you really need to, have some hard conversation around and think about before you really embark on the scaling process, because it will impact you.
It makes me think about, I'm a fan of Les McEwen's book, Predictable Success. And, and he talks about, after your startup phase, we have some challenges, whatever, if you have some level of success, you get to this phase that he calls fun. And it's it's a phase where, things are starting to get, the money's coming in, you sort of rocking, and, the visionary is happy, and they have somebody that he calls an operator. I won't get into his whole framework, but it's worth checking out for our listeners. But, and you can operate in fun forever. But it's not scalable. And then, once you scale and you try to get to what he calls predictable success, where you have a scaled business with systems and processes and, the right team in place, et cetera, but the phase he calls in between fun and predictable success, he calls whitewater. And there's a reason for that, right? Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's that we use that model a lot. And I think that, Les talks about this, but I see it in company again and again, is you move into whitewater unless you have a plan to get through whitewater quickly and into that predictable success. It's painful.
That's right. And it's interesting because, we're talking about deals, which is really where, we focus, in this podcast. Deals can be a great way to help to scale, but also deals can throw you into whitewater if you don't do it right. Yeah. You're not prepared. I mean, integrating technology, integrating culture, integrating people, integrating new clients, integrating different systems. So, I'd love to hear, in your code, when you work with clients, how do you prepare these clients? They look at it grow in general, but certainly through deals. How do you prepare them so that their journey through whitewater? Because I don't believe you can skip whitewater, but their journey through whitewater is much much smoother, and they get to predictable success much more quickly.
Yeah, I would say it's really speed. It's like you're always going to go through whitewater. You just want to go through it as fast as possible.
So that was some great information from Bruce Eckfeldt, who helps companies scale. Hope you enjoyed that. Again, check out his episode if you haven't heard it yet. We now move on to Phil Buchanan. Phil has a very substantial educational company in the financial services space. And we talked about, it happened to be in financial services, but it applies everywhere, on doing deals in terms of small onboarding deals or acquisitions. And one of the scaling techniques is how to do geographical expansion the right way in doing deals. So check out Phil Buchanan's input on accelerating growth.
In my way of thinking, a deal, quote unquote, can take any and all of the examples that you talked about. And some of the more successful deals that I've actually witnessed have been scenarios where there are, if you will, small lift outs. And again, this goes back to the purpose of why you wish to do a deal. And so I'll give you a couple of examples where I've been directly involved in recent months and years that really turned the tide. So you're part of an organization, and you're strongly established in a certain marketplace. You've got the capacity to grow. You've got the capital to grow, and you don't want to go into a marketplace necessarily de novo. But what you're not looking to do is to create a huge capital strain on your entity. One of the smartest things that you can do there is to go in and make a strategic hire to establish in a new marketplace. So you're in XYZ city. You want to be in ABC city. How do you go about doing that? One of the things that I would encourage people to think about, if that's truly an objective they've got, is usually that first deal, that first transaction, that first hire in a new marketplace needs to carry what I call a level of gravitas to it, because I've seen both sides of this. I've seen firms go into a marketplace and they won't go in and take the really, really big leap. They'll go in and quietly acquire a tier 2 or a tier 3 practice, or do a lift out, or do a hire. And again, it's a tier 2 or it's a tier 3, and it makes almost zero splash. It doesn't catch anybody's attention. And when I say anybody's attention, I mean the competitor marketplace, but also mean the client marketplace, because many times those tier 2 and tier 3 practices, they don't have the top tier quality clientele that are part of it. They don't have the thriving reputation. They don't have the growth engine behind it. And so the situations that I've seen there that have been more successful have been when you do go after the more successful practices, and you may even pay a bit of a premium for that first opportunity to establish that brand, to establish that track record. Because really what you're trying to do, my experience, and going into a new market like that, is you're buying reputation. You're establishing yourself, you're establishing your firm, but you're taking the reputation of that experienced practitioner, or that experienced practice, and adding it in and folding it in under your umbrella. And that does a couple of things. Number one, that gets you established in that marketplace, and hopefully with a positive and accretive cash flow. But the second thing that it does is it alerts the other potential joiners of the practice down the line that you're very serious about that marketplace, that you're willing to make that level of investment. And so I would, just as a lesson learned, is when you're coming into a new marketplace, come into that marketplace, be forward leaning, take your time, do your diligence, and be willing to invest what's necessary to make that type of transaction. I don't know if you've seen something similar in your experience, or maybe even something different.
No. I absolutely think it's brilliant advice, and I 100% agree with it. And then, the interesting part is, just to follow through on what you're saying, is those, tier 2 firms, which may be, that are not the right firms to be the initial firm to give you the gravitas and establish yourself in the market. Those are great firms to then tuck in and acquire, on the second, third, and fourth deal, because there are a lot of quality firms out there that are doing, great work for clients, but they don't necessarily have the reputation, they don't have the scale, they don't have the systems, et cetera. And, what you do is, on those deals, that's not your first deal, but it could be your second, third, and fourth deal.
That's exactly right.
Boy, did I have fun with Phil Buchanan on that episode. Check out and go back. Definitely a fun episode to listen to if you haven't heard it yet. And we just had a blast, and we've got to know each other. And Phil's a great guy. So check out his episode. All right, now we move on to our final excerpt from Matt Wavro. So Matt has built a phenomenal company in New York City in the construction and engineering space. And he talks about strategic alliances to help accelerate growth, including with minority and women-owned business enterprises, which is another key strategy. So check out Matt Wavro.
We do have another deal that's kind of in the works. So some strategic alliances. So a big part of construction in New York City, and certainly with public work, like work for the city or the state, is MWBE. That's minority and women-owned business enterprises. There are goals for MWBE participation in projects. So we formed some alliances with other inspection agencies that are MWBEs, and we've been able to take a project and basically have sub 30% of it out to an MWBE and be able to help satisfy the MWBE goals for the project. That's some of the things that we've done.
And that's a great area. I've done some of those deals, and listeners, it's a great area because there are these, requirements, and some of them are governmental. So some of them are even in corporate deals. Some of the big companies have requirements from the MWBE participation. And at the same time, some of these MWBE companies need some additional capacity, to be able to fulfill some of these contracts, because some of them tend to be smaller and et cetera. So it works out really well because the majority-owned company like Matt's gets access to contracts and projects they wouldn't otherwise be able to sometimes. And the WBE company gets in on the deal and is able to provide services with the support of the strategic alliance company partner like Matt's company on jobs that are sometimes bigger or more complex than they can handle on their own.
Yeah, I have to give credit to the company. A lot of the ways that we have grown has been through me seeing an opportunity. So I'm a mechanical engineer by background. So I started doing mechanical inspections, and I was given advice to, hey, Matt, you need to have your company do not only the mechanical, but the structural as well. And I said, hey, that's a good idea. Become the one-stop shop. And they're like, yeah, exactly. Because, an owner wants to hire one company to do all their inspections. So I went out, I started branching into structural inspections. And then, you can see that the large construction projects, again, on that one-stop shop, aspect is they want you to have a concrete testing laboratory under your umbrella, not just have it as a subcontract. So that's when I built a concrete testing laboratory. Now I can say I'm truly, a one-stop shop because now I have my own lab. So, on that note, as I was young in the industry, maybe 2 or 3 years, I had a gentleman join me who became one of my structural directors. So he was in charge of the structural division. He worked with me for a good couple of years. We got along great. Wonderful guy, wonderful engineer, very experienced. And he got whisked away for his dream job. So he's Colombian. He speaks Spanish. He's a PE. And some company said, hey, we need an engineer who can speak Spanish to run their own little engineering company and support what we do. So he says, Matt, I'm sorry, this is my dream job come true. I have to go. I said, by all means, best wishes, best of luck. We'll see what happens, right? So he did that for 5 years. And then that company decided they didn't want to be in the engineering business anymore. So they were going to get rid of his little division. So he calls up and tells me this, and he says, hey, is there anything that, you think we can do together? I said, absolutely. So things kind of come full circle. So he actually had an engineering company set up, which is what he did the engineering under for a large German steel manufacturing company. And we saw an opportunity to partner with him. And he's a minority, he's 100% owner. And so we saw an opportunity to, again, form even a stronger strategic alliance. So he's now, we have a relationship now where I can subcontract work to his company, and we're now growing his company. So we're getting it certified as a special inspection agency. We're even considering and have the wheels in progress for basically taking my laboratory and shifting it under his umbrella.
All right. So that was Matt Wavro. So you heard from Carl Gould, Bruce Eckfeldt, Phil Buchanan, and Matt Wavro with excerpts from their Fueling Deals podcast episodes, focusing on aspects of how they accelerated their growth or work with companies to accelerate their growth. So again, their episodes are definitely worth listening to in full. Hope this was valuable to you. Look out for once a quarter other themes that we'll be doing on our best of episodes. And with that, I'd like to thank you, Fueling Deals listeners, for tuning in. Remember, there's only one difference between companies that grow inorganically and those that don't. And it's unrelated to size, amount of capital, or any other factor. Other than that, the owners and executives of companies that do deals make a decision to do deals, and then they take action. It's time to refuel. So until next week, Corey Kupfer signing out.
Thank you again for tuning in. Be sure to leave Fueling Deals a rating and review on iTunes and Google. Check out all our episodes at fuelingdeals.com to find out more resources to accelerate your business growth.